Hello, welcome to the video notes for lesson 5.5. This is all about unit rates and slope. You'll find this lesson in your notes packet starting on page 24. So, let's take a look at the target first. So I can find the unit rate on a graph that doesn't pass through 0, 0, also known as the origin. Alright, so we have an example on this page. You'll see the graph. The graph shows the results of a plant growing contest among 3 friends at a local plant club. I don't know if I've ever heard of such a thing, but let's pretend it exists. Which friend's plant grew the fastest? Explain how you know. So when we're looking at the graph, what we might want to do, or what we would like to do to answer this, is find the change in y over the change in x. That's going to give you your rate. Now, it's a little different when it doesn't start at 0. Especially if you're trying to use a graph or a table. But something to keep in mind, so I'll do another star here. Which line looks or appears steeper? So when we look at the lines and we see how steep they are, that could tell us which one grew faster. And I think some of you are probably already starting to figure it out. Something else I want you to keep in mind is, what do these points here represent? What do they mean? So write this down. What do these points represent? What do they represent, or what do they mean? We're going to talk about that in this video. Alright, so this is our example. We have this over on page 25 also. So we're going to take a look at, we're going to go to 25 now, because we also have this information in tables. So one recommendation, one strategy I have for you is, if you have it in a graph and you're able to transfer the data into a table, that's a pretty good strategy to use, because sometimes looking at the graph isn't going to help you to figure this out. Now in the table, we can just find the change in y over the change in x. Notice I'm putting my x and my y over the appropriate columns so that I am able to tell which one is which. Since I get in the habit of putting this number on the right over this number on the left, so for the first friend, friend 1, I have -2 over 1. So what does that mean? That's -2, and then the height is in inches, over 1 week. So this plant is growing -2 inches every week. That's not very good. The next plant, or friend, is increasing by 2 each time for the number of weeks. And then for the height, it's also increasing by 2. So, finding change in y over change in x, I get 2 over 2, which is equal to 1 over 1. 1 inch per week. And then the last one, friend 3, increasing by 3 each time. And then the height is increasing by 4. So what does that work out to be? Change in y over change in x is equal to 4 over 3. Now, this is not easy to compare to this one over here. I would leave it as a fraction if we were going to write an equation, but in order to compare these, it might be helpful to change this into a mixed number. This is 1 1/3, which is greater than 1. But remember, we're talking about inches per week. Alright, so here's what we need to figure out. Which friend's plant was growing the fastest? Friend 3 has a greater rate of change. A rate of, we'll call it growth for these because these are plants. So what's that mean? So his plant grew faster, or her plant. It grew the fastest. Okay. Now, if I'm looking at the graph, I could actually tell that by looking at the steepness of the line. Friend 3 is the steepest. Friend 1 is actually leaning or slanting the other way. What does that mean? It's a negative slope. So obviously this plant was dying, or because I don't know if it can grow negatively. So the plant must have been dying, and that's why that happened. All right, so that's one example. Let's take a look at the next example on page 26. So, your friend borrows $200 from her parents. The graph shows how much money she owes her parents. How much is she repaying her parents per week? Alright, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to transfer this data onto a table. So I'm going to look at 2 points. I'll take this point and I'll take this point. It doesn't matter what 2 you pick to get this. Notice the graph doesn't start at 0. So because when you borrow money and you're repaying it back, you're not starting at 0 and then paying it back. You're starting at whatever the number is, and then every time you pay some back, it's going to decrease. That's why it's sloping downward. Okay? So my table looks like this. I could call this W for weeks, and this side's the money, but as long as you recognize this is X and this is Y, that's the most important part. So the first point is 0 to 100. The second point is 6 and 80. So let's find the rate of change. So the change over here for the Y, well, let me write this down. Change in Y over change in X is what I'm trying to find here. So to go from 200 to 80, it's decreasing by 120. I already know this is linear because I can see that it's a line. So I'm just going to, I don't need all the points in between. To go from 0 to 6, it's increasing by 6. So I have negative 120 over positive 6. So then when I divide that or simplify it, I end up with negative $20 per week. So, how much is she repaying her parents per week? Again, I've told you this before. If you start to set up a sentence to answer that, each week she pays them. So I'm going to write this down. Each week she pays them. Whether you write this down or say it in pays her parents, or if you write it down or say it in your head, if you were to write 20, each week she pays her parents 20. That shouldn't sound right to you. That should sound incomplete. And the reason why is because we don't have our label. 20 what? $20. So, or we could say, she pays her parents back $20 per week. Any way you want to write it, as long as it answers the question completely. You can only answer a question completely if you have a label. Now, I want to show you, well, and we've already started learning about writing equations, and this whole idea of not starting at zero is really going to show up when we start writing equations for these. But being able to find the rate is the big idea for this lesson. So we're going to practice it over and over and over again. Okay, the helicopter. The helicopter takes off from the roof of a building that is 200 feet above ground. The graph shows the altitude of the helicopter as it rises steadily for several minutes. What is the rate of ascent of the helicopter? Now, I'm sure many of you know this, but just in case you don't, the word ascent means to rise, okay? So, what we need to do is, we need to take a couple of points on our graph. I'm going to pick this point, and how about this point here, okay? It doesn't matter which 2 points you pick. I'm going to start setting this up. If you know how to do this already on your own, don't follow my strategy. Follow your own and start doing it. You can stop the video now. If you know what to do, or if you don't know what to do, and you need some help getting started, because I'm not going to answer this completely, I'm just going to start setting it up and then let you finish. Alright, so my X is my time. That's my X. My Y is the feet, or the height, or the ascent. That's my Y value. Alright, so now I'm going to write down my 2 points. Actually, yeah. So the first one is 0 to 100. I want you to write the coordinates of the other point that I have here. So I need the X and the Y value for that. Then, you are going to find the change in Y over the change in X. So you're going to find the rate. Make sure you come up with a label, and then answer this question. What is the rate of ascent of the helicopter? I'm going to put a box around it, because as Bucks tells us, we put a box around the question. I want you to answer this in a complete sentence. So, if I can get some answers and some good strategies, now, we won't be going over this for a long time, so some of you might forget, but I'll be awarding some points on the scoreboard for let's say, I guess, up to 5 people that have the correct answer for this and are willing to share and talk about it. Alright? If you're having trouble understanding this lesson, make sure you come and see me, or see a friend, or rewatch the video. Good luck, and we will see you in math.